Hi, welcome to week 7. This week we're going to be talking about creating a strong classroom culture, and that's chapter 5 in Teach Like a Champion. So I would like you to read through the chapter, and in this video we're just going to talk about the 5 aspects of classroom culture, and then this week's essential question. But in addition to reading chapter 5, I'd like you to also take a look at the videos that are provided on the disc for Teach Like a Champion, and look at the techniques, and then choose one of the techniques as techniques 28 through 35, and choose at least one to detail in your response as an example of your answer to this week's essential question. So I think this is a great chapter, and I think thinking about these 5 aspects of classroom culture is a really important step in defining what your classroom management technique is. So the first part of the chapter goes through these 5 aspects. So really quickly, I'm just going to kind of go over them and talk to you about how the book defines them, and then how also my interpretation of them is, and then hopefully we can continue that conversation on this week's forum. So the first aspect of classroom culture is discipline, and I like that the book talks about how maybe there's a definition of discipline as traditionally used in a classroom setting, but really this idea that instead of disciplining students, we're creating an environment in which we're teaching students to be self-disciplined. So this idea, and we've kind of, I hope I've emphasized this throughout the course, that with a front-end investment of teaching students what's right and how to be successful in your particular class, you will enable and create a situation in which they can be successful. So that's all the beginning routine, all the routines I was talking about at the beginning of the year. So how you pass back papers, where you post the assignments, what you do at the beginning of the bell, how you call your students for silence. So these are all things that you're teaching your students how to do, and you're teaching them how to be self-disciplined towards the beginning of the year, and then towards by the time they figure out what you expect from them, they're able to self-discipline themselves so that they can be successful. And then the idea of management is the next one, and it's this idea of reinforcing behavior by consequences and rewards. And this is traditionally, when we say discipline or management, we're usually using them interchangeably, but I like how this chapter kind of separates them both. And the biggest emphasis, I think, with management and this idea of reinforcing behavior with this series of consequences and rewards is that the more you use it, the less effective it is. So if you're able to help teach your students how to be self-disciplined, the idea will be that hopefully you won't need these consequences and rewards. So it's important to have them, have your students be aware that they will be enforced, but if you're able to create a classroom culture in which you don't have to constantly be giving consequences, then your class overall will be more successful. So then that kind of moves on to the next one, which is control, and your textbook defines it as the capacity to cause someone to choose to do what you ask regardless of the consequences. So this is the idea that the more controlled environment you set up, and the more procedures you have, and the more that your students understand what's expected of them, the more freedom you'll be able to give them within the assignment. So one example that it gives, and I like this idea of replacing vague commands like be quiet with specific and useful ones, like please go back to your seat and complete the warm-up on the board in the next 5 minutes. So one is possibly, a reaction to a behavior, but the second one is specific and useful, and that it's telling students exactly what they need to be doing to be successful. So control, this idea that the more control you have over your classroom, the more your students are allowed the freedom to learn. So I thought that's a really good one as well. And then when you get control of your classroom, you go on to the next one, which is you're able to influence them. So this is the buy-in that teachers are always thriving to achieve within their classroom. And this idea that as your procedures become well-known and well-controlled in your classroom, the students aren't even thinking about the consequences and the rules and the rewards that they might get, but they're doing it because they want to succeed in your class and they want to make you happy. So this is the influence thing. The final element is engagement, and I think as a lesson planner, you always want to be thinking about engagement. So how long is are the average student attention spans in my classroom? How can I keep a variety of methods of producing material so that my students are busy and productive from the beginning of class to the end of class? So you've probably noticed maybe in some classrooms that you've observed that I always think of group work as a time when sometimes classroom management starts to unravel a little bit. And I would argue that part of that reason is because the structure for what the students are supposed to be doing is not controlled enough, so they don't know what they're supposed to be doing. And so that's when goofing off and other non-productive behaviors start occurring. So this idea that engagement, it gives these students don't even have time to consider what they could be doing because they're always being productive in your classroom. So for this week's essential question, I'd like you to think about these 5 classroom culture aspects and think about how you can create a synergy of these 5 in your classroom. So I'd like you to choose one of those techniques that are in the back of Chapter 5, watch the video, and make sure you're detailing at least one in how you hope to create this synergy and how you'll utilize one of those techniques in order to do that. And then please also mention something that your mentor teacher does or another teacher does that you see as an example of this technique or this synergy that you hope to achieve. Hope you have a great week. I can't wait to read your forums.